Welcome to the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Studio, where we explore the passion and the purpose behind some of the amazing people in our community, and above all, their stories. I'm Dr. Pablo Paredes Romero, and all my career, I've been fascinated by entrepreneurship and innovation. From the moment an idea is scribbled on a napkin, drawn on a tablet, whiteboarded, spoken out loud in the shower or in the car on the way to someone's 9 to 5, it's all about the work and the art behind the venture. Norm Porges is the retired visionary behind the Prime Shine chain of car washes that graced the California Central Valley for over 2 decades. He cuts a quiet and pensive character until he feels he has something to say, and when he does, you listen. It's a remarkable combination of stoicism and sincerity that comes through when he searches for the connective tissue for the space between occupation and fulfillment, the fit and finish of what it is to live a life well lived. He's intentional, compelling, and always authentic. Norm's New York, or at least to my ears, is there, and it's part of the charm of the man himself. Good afternoon, Norm. How are you doing?
Doing great. Fun to be here.
Fantastic. We're really happy to have you, sir. Through our talk, we're going to be exploring some of the areas related to entrepreneurship, the life of an entrepreneur, the life of a small business owner, and we're going to touch on some of our guiding themes. I want to start with community. Tell me about the community in which you grew up.
Born and raised in New York City. Not New York City that you tourists think of with high buildings, but this is New York City in the suburbs. We were a town the furthest out in New York City to the next county, Nassau County. Very, I would say, blue collar, hardworking people, very mix of German, Irish, and a smattering of Jews. We were the 5th Jewish family into the neighborhood, born in 1942. So 1942 to 46, 7, 8, there was a lot of discrimination. So there was a lot of anti-Semitism. And I tell people comically that I learned to run fast. But it was community, hardworking, blue collar, very ethnic, mixed community.
What do you feel that you still carry with you from that place?
Certainly my progressive attitude about ethnicity. We have to all work together, and that's something we did as kids. If you're a good ball player, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you were, you're on the team. And this street played that street played the next street. That's how neighborhoods were in New York City. Bringing over from that, I'm very pro mixed communities, and I certainly understand the underdog's position in the community.
Always cheer for the underdog?
I do. Typically, I do. I'm being an underdog myself, so I kind of sense and feel.
I find that in the people that I meet in my travels that the underdog ethos, the spirit of being an underdog, people identify with it for different reasons.
Sure.
How do you feel that you identify most with the underdog?
How or why?
Actually, now that you asked the questions, you've given me my own better questions. How and why?
Well, the how is easy, being again of Jewish religion, and there's anti-Semitism widespread and unfortunately growing in this country. So you certainly get a sense, and I'm aware of. And not only that, I make a point to people who I meet. They know what my Jewish background is. I don't want to be embarrassed that they would say something to me, as I have in my past. So I let them know who I am to save any embarrassment. So I understand the underdog. The underdog oftentimes doesn't get a chance because he's an underdog. He's a different color, a different whatever, talks funny. When I came to Modesto, I talked funny. I talked New Yorkese. I used to go out to the farmers, and in my business life, not Prime Shine, but prior to that, we'd go out to the farmers, and I jokingly was said, "So this is where milk comes? I thought it comes from Safeway." Well, I just thought it was. But typically in New York City, growing up, you don't think about the farms and the fields and whatever. When I see folks working in the field, that's the hardest job, one of the hardest jobs in the world. And I see that, and I feel their suffering and their difficult lives they have.
Very, very challenging work, very challenging life. How would you say that the the business community as you found it in the Central Valley then has evolved to what it is now?
This was not my first stop after New York City. So I had 13 moves before I hit
13.
Before, because I was in the corporate life, I was transferred around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So between getting transferred and getting fired, I say successfully fired, and those can be other subjects we talk about, part of my failures. So I hit here after Los Angeles. I was down in Los Angeles and came up to Modesto. This was the smallest community I've ever been to. Grew up in New York, graduated at University of Denver, went to Kansas City, Chicago, Minneapolis, back to Chicago, LA, and some parts in between. So this was the smallest community. What I saw was incredible opportunity, just incredible opportunity. There was big, quote unquote, big city ideas that could be brought to this community, and it would be brand new. It'd be initial concepts to these people here, but old concepts someplace else. Prime Shine being being a perfect example. There's nothing new that we did with Prime Shine other than Californiaize it. So I saw the concept, there was nothing like exterior car washing in California. It was all, at that time, $15, get out of the car. And back east, people back east in New York, they don't have time to get out of the car, wait the 30 minutes, and it is 30 minutes, and a flag to be waved. Just didn't have time. Doesn't fit their lifestyle. Bam, 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 in, out, whatever. And so there was nothing magic about what I did other than Californiaize it. Bright, cheery, very different than the typical Midwestern or East Coast express car wash, which is typically cinder block, dirty, greasy, graffitied, barbed wire, horrible. And that's why the industry, of course, got such a bad rap, and sometimes deservingly so. But we attempt to change all that, and to a large extent we have.
That's really interesting when you talk about bringing the ideas from one place to another altogether. In the time that you've been in Modesto, how have you seen it evolve, meaning the business community?
I see a lot more entrepreneurship. The guy selling melons or fresh fruit in a stand on a corner is entrepreneurship. You didn't see it back 20 years ago or 30 years ago as much as we see it today. But if you go back in history and look at New York City, Lower East Side New York City, when immigrants first came over, those streets were loaded with push carts selling fruits, vegetables. My grandfather did that. And so it's evolved. It's nothing new of someone being out in a corner selling their wares. I'm hopeful over time the community will catch up to what I think are some fabulous ideas that are being presented to create a better, more vibrant Stanislaus County community in terms of activities, in terms of cleaning it up, in terms of developing areas in downtown to make it residential, make sporting events. I think all those things are very, very positive. Unfortunately, the community just takes so long to turn the battleship around.
What do you think is setting the tone and the pace for that now?
I'm going to go back and say, why hasn't it? And I think the ag community, generally speaking, the ag community is very conservative because they can't predict what next year is going to be. And so it's very fiscally conservative community, very much so. And so I think that boils over to the way the community is being run by their forced. When you're forced to doing something off their rear ends, because they are, and so forth. So I think we're going to be forced into making some progressive moves.
What do you see that you feel is encouraging towards the vision that you see for it?
Well, and I'll throw out some names. The Stanislaus Community Foundation is something that is incredibly productive, has great leadership, and Marianne Cannon, who is in touch with other communities who have already gone the extra mile and the extra step. And she, for one, is front runner in making this a better community. I mean, there's other reasons too, she's recruiting great people. When you have grassroots, you have the Porges Family Foundation, you have the Boyette Foundation, you have others, Lynn Dickerson involved. When you get those grassroots who are willing to put the money up for the studies to find out what direction, it's always been amazing to me that outsiders come to our community and they're blown away at what we have. And we in the community, A, don't take advantage of it, and B, think our community is terrible. In some respects, it needs to get a lot better. But in so many respects, the opportunities are here. And outsiders see that.
What do you think leads to that sort of endemic way of identifying the community by the people in it that other people from the outside see differently? What do you think contributes to that?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure I have really a great answer, other than what our community, as it grows up in our community, when the children grow up in this community, they see what it is. They see the trash in the streets. They see the chuck holes in the roads. And so they see all the negative, and that's just systemic. That just continues with that thought process. So we got to break that cycle.
Where do you see it all going?
Well, being the optimist that I am, I only see great stuff. It's not that we're on the bottom. We think we're on the bottom. We're not on the bottom, but we have a long way to go to get to the top.
What would you say was your most powerful learning experience as a small business owner?
Great question. I think I learned in the long run to empower employees and make them accountable. That's just boiling it right down to it. We like to say that Prime Shine was employee-centric. We firmly believed that by treating your employees the way they felt that they should be treated, they would treat the customers in the same fashion. At least we proved it true. When we started that campaign of being employee-centric, it took a year or so or 2 years for the ball to get rolling. We found surveys from our customers were so much better. Our business improved. So overall, that was probably a highlight in our business.
If you can recall, what was the tipping point that made you stop and say, wait, there may be a change of direction in our future in terms of employee empowerment and accountability?
Being honest with myself, it probably was at the point that Evan took over when I allowed him to be creative himself. He's of a different generation. My generation, it's difficult to see what I observed, but it's difficult for us to do those things. Evan was able to, a new generation was able to make that happen.
Who or what has been your greatest teacher?
This is an interesting answer. And I think myself. I think we are our best teachers by understanding our failures, how to handle them, how to correct them, and go on from there. You have to be your own best teacher. There can't be a book. There can't be an individual that is going to put into practice what your life is all about. It has to be you. Sorry about that. I know you were expecting something else.
No, not at all. That was a wonderful.
I just was thinking of that, and I think that's what it is. I can tell you, I'm my own best teacher. When I failed out of school, I learned from that. All the failures I had, you learn from that. No one's teaching me those things. If someone taught it to me, I wouldn't have done it in the first place.
There's a term that it's made its way into popular culture, and it's fairly popular now. You see a lot in academia as well. Now you see it a lot in business. Lifelong learning. What does the term lifelong learning mean to you?
Learning is a journey, and the journey ends when you pass. You learn all the time. I don't care if it's crossword puzzles that you're doing. You're learning. That mind has to be active. So we made a point of continuing our education, going to conventions. So there's a convention for everything and an association for everything. So we'd go to car wash conventions, which, by the way, are quite large. And there you share ideas and you go to meetings and keep yourself up to date. You have to do that. I don't care what you're in. You got to stay up to date. And even technology, if you're not current today in technology, go find it. Places are free. Will teach you that stuff. I ran big businesses. bought and sold $1 million companies.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? The accountant did all the work.
Mm-hmm.
The HR people did all the work. I was the front of it, and I negotiated it and did all, but I didn't do the grunt work. Well, the biggest challenge to a small business owner getting started is how do you do that? Payroll. How do you do that? Profit and loss, balance sheets, and how do you do all that stuff? What I did is I had the time. I learned. I just went online and learned what the hell a balance sheet, Excel worksheet,
To your point, it's a different color and shape when it goes from the P&L to my P&L.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In the role of research, especially in competitive analysis, what role would you say that research plays in the everyday life of a small business owner?
It depends what you define research. I love statistics. Always did. Was my first A in college was statistics. The shape and color of the Prime Shine logo was from a statistical study of colors and shapes.
Really?
Because and you may want to get into that a little bit later, but my concept was when I said California eyes and exterior car washing experience, I wanted to market to women. That was my key market. I didn't want the macho trucks and the radio booming and all that. I wanted to market to women. Why? Because A, they want to feel safe and secure. So we had glass on the sides. We had lots of color, bright color, yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Why yellow? Yellow because statistically, it's warm and fuzzy, and women appreciate yellow best. That means to them safety and warmth. And so we did, yellow was our primary color, and the rest of it was claustrophobic. I'm a little claustrophobic myself, so I want to eliminate that, the darkness, the ugliness. So went glass on the sides, light coming in from the top. That's what we tried to do. So statistically, and that's research. I'll tell you another thing, where our locations were. There's about 3 things you want in a location. So it's traffic, it's speed, and it's population. So I would sit there literally on our first real location. I tried to find what traffic counts were, and there weren't good quality traffic counts that the city or county was able to provide. I'd sit there for an hour in the morning. I just took a clicker, counted cars as they go through, and you do that at 4 segments. And I had my averages for all the hours and whatever, and I had my statistics. I'd go back and do it a couple of times to make sure statistically it was close. That's how we developed number of car counts. We needed a certain amount of car counts going by our place to kind of make the economics work.
I remember those clickers, those die-cast
ones. I still have it, yeah. The little chrome ones, right? Little
exactly. Yeah, the sound haunts you forever.
You got the other button that goes back to 0.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's what you do.
What role, and I'm going to take us to a place where you can speak to a small business owner of a different generation, say the present, one behind it. What role would you advise them that research should play in their everyday experience as a small business owner?
I'd say don't go in it nilly-willy. You need some basis. You're going to produce a P&L that's got numbers and statistics. So you have to do your research.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best places to do research and get those things is from a trade magazine. Every profession has a trade association, and every trade association puts out their newsletter. And every newsletter they have materials for the new business. If you just want to start a car wash, here's the materials we got for you. Why? They want you to join the association. They want you to be part of it. I got so much information. 2 sources I got it. One is from trade magazines and going to trade shows. And the other one, I was very fortunate to have a friend in New York that owned one of these. Again, typical dirty, cinder block, ugly, Jersey City, New Jersey. And he had one of these, but he was willing to share with me statistics. What does it take? What does it take to cut a profit? How many cars? All that kind of stuff. And I caution people starting a business to go talk to, I'll say competitors, but they're not competitors once you get outside of 100 miles. So Go talk to people outside 100 miles. Give them a call and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is who I am. I'm trying to open up a taco shop or whatever, sewing machine repair. Tell me, how'd you do it? Also, the county, the city has wonderful libraries, wonderful consultants, free, doesn't cost you anything. Cities and county want you to start businesses. Why? To provide taxes and payroll and whatever. So they're very, very SBDC, the SBA, all of these organizations will help you in starting up your business and give you the statistics necessary. I didn't know how to do a spreadsheet, and it happened to be the Stanislaus County Economic Development, SCEDCO, at that time. I sat down and a consultant, a fellow, helped me understand spreadsheets. I didn't know how to approach a bank. They helped me approach a bank. All of those things. And all that stuff is free. But you got to do it. As another fellow said during commencement, you can't sit around waiting for the phone to ring. Get up, knock on their doors.
So much wisdom in commencement speeches. It's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Take me back to the first time you looked at the people and businesses with whom you wanted to compete.
I never thought of compete. I wasn't competing with anyone. First of all, we had a brand new idea for this community. Our biggest competition was you doing it in your driveway. That was the biggest competition we had. We had no exterior-only car washes in town. We had full serve. I looked at it as it's just a different business. You know, that one you want to spend 45 minutes and $15, and we were opening up a place for $3.95. Stay in the car, boom, 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 to the outside. Free vacuums didn't come along till later. And there's a whole story there. But so I never felt competition. I also tell the new business owner, don't worry about the competition. Do not. You worry about what you're doing, because you can't control anything they do. You know, when we first opened up, competition was in radio ads about, knocking us, in essence. And I say, never knock your competition. And if anything, praise them, because it just takes on a whole different meaning, when someone comes to your place. Oh, this person is a nice person, or whatever they think. Don't knock the competition. Don't worry about the competition. There is no competition. Make yourself heads and shoulders so there is no competition. Put yourself above that, above everyone else, so there's no competition. Empower your employees to do the thing. Give the customer the service. Then there's no competition. Don't worry about it.
It's similar to a quote. I think it's a Michael Jordan quote, or at least it's related to Michael Jordan. He talked about competing with other players. It was always, I compete with Michael Jordan yesterday.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And that's a good way of looking at it.
I want to talk about innovation. What does the word innovation mean to you?
Filling a void. There's a need for a product or a service. That's innovation. Maybe nothing necessarily new, but it may be new to that community or to that group you're serving. So that's innovation. Prime Shine was exterior car washing was not new. In the East Coast, that's what we had. We didn't have full service. In California, all of a sudden you come along with exterior washing. It's all brand. It looks like a great innovation. People come up to me and say, that's a great idea. I thought of it. No, it's another subject. How many people said, I thought of it, but didn't do it? So executing your thoughts is part of innovation.
What do you believe the word innovation mean to us here in the Central Valley?
Think outside the box. We're very much in a box. We're not the only ones, by the way, but we're in a box. We've done it this way so long. How many times have you heard that? We've done it this way so long, and it's good enough. Well, life isn't good enough. You always have to be innovating. You always have to be inventing. You always have to be making it better.
Speaking of the Prime Shine days, take me back there. There are ideas and there are innovations. What innovation that you and your team at Prime Shine made made you draw an involuntarily quicker breath? Like, wow, that sort of innovation.
The breath away question came at a point maybe we're open about a month. We had an article written about us, and it was in the Modesto Bee, front page of the business section, full color, washing for less, or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about us, $3.95, whatever. And it didn't take about 3 hours after that paper came out that we started seeing lineups, and then the lines were wrapping around the street. Literally, we knew at that point, took a deep breath, and I said, I have to leave the job. I had a job. It was my source of income while we were building this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to leave that, and I got to do this full time. I didn't know what Prime Shine was going to be, and I almost thought it was going to be part time, and I'll have a manager run it. But that wasn't the case. It was a full-fledged business, and then you throw your life at it.
I like that.
Yeah.
You throw your life at it. I want to talk about application. What does the word application mean to you in the context of a business education?
So I think a business education, you're learning the basics. What I'd like to say to folks when we're doing hiring, for instance, not hiring at the grassroots level, but at a managerial level, come in with a college degree. The college degree is nothing more than an indication that they had the fortitude and the wherewithal to stay in it 4 or 5 years to finish something. And more importantly, do creative thinking. Creative thinking is where you're applying what you did at school, you apply to everyday business life. Creative thinking, how to solve a problem. All it is. It doesn't matter what course, whether you took any business courses or not. Evan didn't take any business courses. When he came to work, we started teaching him, or he started learning about finance, balance sheets. That came to him because we took him to all the meetings so that he'd start learning those things. But an arts major, we love reading and writing. We love for them to be able to clearly communicate. That was probably the utmost. In our business, it was communicate, and we also hired attitudes. So you don't go to school for an attitude. There's no course in attitude. So we hired attitudes. What'd that mean? We did lots of different things to test people's attitudes. One was there would be a panel of 3 of our managers and employees, whatever, and this poor individual has to face this, trying to get a job. If he didn't smile 3 times during that interview, he was not a candidate for Prime Shine.
There was a metric.
There was a metric, statistical. But literally, if they didn't, that's not the person we need. Because our mantra to our employees, I used to preach to them, all we want you to do with a customer, say, please, thank you, a smile, and mean it. That's all we want to do. If you can do that, if you can get your employees to do that, there's no competition. The service levels were so poor here in Modesto when I came here. They still are poor. I don't know. You could probably ask me a question. Why do you think?
Why do you think?
Well, I think the educational levels of the general population in Modesto and in Stanislaus County is probably not as high as we'd like it. And so communication skills are poor. A lot of them are first time, immigrants from somewhere, families still speaking the foreign language, so the communication skills in English are probably not as good. So there were tremendous opportunities. That's how I saw it, that the service levels were so poor here that if we could teach our employees to say, please, thank you, smile, and mean it, we'd be way ahead.
What would our students here at Stan State be best served to know when applying what they learn here with us to where they're going?
Well, it goes back to communications. That's where the skill levels are different. That's where they differentiate Mary Jones and Carol Kelly. They're interviewing. It's communication, one-on-one communication. And, you get that by being out and about. not everyone has a personality. If you don't have that personality, then be an accountant.
We got a school full of accounting
Clive
students.
Grimbleby is going to, he'll die when he hears that. But, I was just at lunch with him, and we talked about an accountant was dry. I have a major in accounting. I couldn't see myself doing that because I'm much more outgoing, and I couldn't see myself sitting at a desk. But I do have a minor in accounting. Get out and about. Your students, even before they graduate, ought to be very much involved in the community one way or the other. That's how they then hone the skills, communication skills. I know I go through, for our scholarship, I go through scholarship applications, and there's probably 20 of them, and there's a section in there about community. You can tell the folks that are involved in their community how they're heads and shoulders above others that are not involved in the community. Now, I know a lot of them say, well, we don't have time, and I got this and I got that. No one has time. I tell people, you think you're busy? You want to hear my schedule? No, I don't want to hear your schedule. Well, of course not. Why would you want to hear my schedule? We're all busy. But you put it in priority.
Mm-hmm.
And priority number one, I'd say you better be out and about. Be involved in the community. Church is a great place to start. That's fine. But I'm talking the general population, not church. Because churches provide a certain security that may not be reality when you get outside that environment. But get yourself involved to get yourself honing those skills. It'll put you way ahead of everyone else.
Chambers of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce or Junior Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
We, by the way, at PrimeShine, required our managers, required them to be community. Now, they could choose what they wanted to do outside of church. What mattered is they're giving back to the community, they're honing their skills, and, by the way, people want to do business with people they know and like, and they're gonna be networking.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to hear that 1,000 times from me is network, because networking is key to the new business owner.
Who is Norm Porges?
Didn't I tell you enough?
About other stuff.
Norm Porges is probably pretty complex. I'd like to say I'm simple. I think simple. I like outlines, and I like my mind works organized. But I think myself is pretty complex. I do like, though, simplifying workload. I was an efficiency expert, quote unquote expert, when I worked in big corporations. That was part of my job, to make workload more efficient. By my mental nature, I like efficiency. I don't like long carried on speeches. I don't think anyone can sit there for more than 5 minutes or 4 minutes in a speech and understand it. I don't like company mottos or philosophies that are 2 paragraphs long. If I asked you, what's the mission of Cal State University? You might give me a little what you think, but here it's written out on a wall someplace.
Sure.
We like to keep it simple.
What I know of your story, the public version, the front facing, is remarkable. I want to go back to Norm before Norm knew who Norm was. Young Norm, if you want to call it that. What was he like?
He was shy. I had no social skills in terms of male, female. Women scared the death out of me. I never learned to dance. That meant you had to hold a girl, or touch a girl, I was active in scouting right through high school up to college. For one reason is it didn't involve the social activities with women, so I was very shy. But outgoing in other ways. I mean, as president of band and orchestra, you can't be shy. I suppose I had leadership skills. I don't know why or how. President of band and orchestra, I was a self-taught musician.
Really? What do you play?
What do you think? What do I look like?
I'm going to say piano. Comes to mind.
No.
No.
Not even close.
Okay, so I've got archery and piano and bowling.
So I played the tuba.
The tuba.
And self-taught, teaching myself, and we had a music teacher who I loved dearly, shaped my life in a lot of ways. Down in the basement of the high school, the band room was orchestra and music room, had a little room in the back that used to be a bathroom. They took out the stall, took out the toilets, but they had the stalls. So I would bring a chair in, and the next guy would have a trumpet, and you sit in there, and you're learning the notes and everything.
Right.
So I became relatively accomplished in that. Again, self-taught, made the New York City High School Orchestra, which was quite an accomplishment. When all these,
Wow.
believe me, I probably didn't belong there, but how many tubas? I had 2 tubas in the New York City High School Orchestra. I soloed in my senior year at the spring concert. Asleep in the Deep was the music.
Uh-huh.
And my teacher says, if you'd like, let's put you as a soloist for the spring concert in your senior year. And I conducted graduation for high school. I conducted the orchestra with the customary marches and whatever. So it was, I had a fascinating career.
Now that I know you're a musician, I have to ask you the musician question, the quintessential. Why the tuba?
They didn't have enough trombones. There wasn't enough trombones. That's really what I wanted to play.
There you go.
But no, they were all taken. Sorry, but we do have, tubas.
Where would you say that Norm, or how did that Norm see Norm now? What was his vision then of what you are now?
Well, that Norm then would hardly understand or know the Norm that there is today.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of accomplishments. I was a run-of-the-mill, a poor student, run-of-the-mill kind of kid. Other than, again, there's this dichotomy here. I was president of this, but really I was run-of-the-mill and didn't go around in social circles. For one, getting this honorary doctorate degree. Out of the question. The old Norm would say, Norm from years ago would say, what, are you kidding? These things out of the question. But I've been blessed with and fortunate to have received that and several other awards, which are thank yous for accomplishments that I've achieved. Not necessarily always by myself, too, because Evan was involved and other members of our staff always involved. But that's what the old Norm would be, or the original Norm, the young Norm, would be surprised and I'm sure pleased.
Who do you remember from your earliest allies? Supporters, employees, mentors?
I had a lot of mentors over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I could easily make friends. I like making friends. And that's part of the networking. So I had a lot of friends, and a lot of bosses were friends of mine. And they all, one way or another, encouraged me. My parents certainly are in that category. My mother in particular, she was a go-getter. My father was an educator, a teacher in the New York City school system, in vocational school system, that unfortunately go by the wayside. That was a horrible mistake or turn that we made doing away with the vocational school systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's my thought that today that a young person coming out of high school, if they're not college material or don't want to go to college, they don't have a lot of choices. They can flip hamburgers, they can go into the military, or they can join a gang. And so, I think doing away with getting those folks trained in HVAC, electronics, plumbing, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
So we, as our Porges Family Foundation, are very supportive of those systems that will help widen the opportunity for those kids who don't want to go to college, to excel in life.
What would Norm now say to start a conversation with Norm then?
I probably have to use an expletive, but I won't do that.
It's an adult show, so.
He'd probably say, I'm very proud of you and what you've accomplished. It kind of had you get there. And I'd probably have to answer that. And I'd answer it. I am not necessarily, I'm more a go-getter now than I was back when.
Really?
I was much more of a thoughtful person in terms of analyzing and applying statistical and that kind of thing. So I really wasn't outgoing. Believe it or not, I think my failures pushed me into this direction as a must. There was a point at which I think it was after the third time I was fired from my work, and I want to make a point the 3 times I was terminated was not for cause, but I was really a bad fit in the corporate scene. I'm not a good corporate citizen, but it took me 20-some years to figure it out. I was 48 years old when I started PrimeShine. If it wasn't for those failures of pushing me into things that I had to do, because I had a family, you got to provide a living, and it forced me into rethinking, what is the direction I'm going into? Why am I doing that? I'm banging my head against the wall. I go from one corporation to another corporation. What am I doing? And so it forced me into thinking what my life journey was all about.
PrimeShine, the name, what inspired it?
Well, there's a lot of interesting stories with that. So I already told you the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
I also will tell you that it's yellow, magenta, and blue, Cub Scout colors. Warm, fuzzy, marketing to women, warm, fuzzy, Cub Scout colors. PrimeShine, I still have a piece of paper that I was writing down all kinds of names. I do my best thinking when either I'm shaving or I'm exercising. So one of those two things, and I remember Zaki Farms, large poultry producer, and their tagline was Zaki Farms, Prime California Poultry. That was their tagline. There is no such thing as prime chickens. Poultry is not great at prime. Beef is, but poultry isn't. It's graded A, B, whatever. So I'm thinking prime. And my brain works in rhymes. It just does. Obviously, shine comes up with prime, and PrimeShine.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote it down. And there were all kinds of things. It was Storm and Norman.
Storm and Norman.
Was high on the list.
That's great.
It would have been named Storm and Norman.
But
if it weren't for a guy by the weatherman up in Sacramento at that time that just got arrested for child molestation.
Oh.
And he was Storm and Norman. He was Norman whoever, but he was Storm and Norman. I didn't know that. I recently I didn't know that. And they said, well, I scratch that sucker. That's not going to work. PrimeShine, when I tested it on people, which is, by the way, statistics and research, test these things out on your neighbor. Mr. Neighbor, would you buy this if I were selling it? Simple. You get a lot of feedback. So PrimeShine, the feedback I got mostly negative. It apparently implied, a guy shining shoes would be a PrimeShine. I don't know. That's the feedback I was getting, but I liked it way too much. We had it as PrimeShine Express. Evan came along and changed it, changed the logo. It's the only first and only change we ever made was a little bit of the colors said PrimeShine Car Wash to identify what are we, and then not Express, because all of a sudden we had a lot of copycats in California. Along came Express car washing. And so we didn't want to be identified with PrimeShine Express, which is what I originally had, pulled that out, put in PrimeShine Car Wash.
What do you feel that the name PrimeShine and its reputation in the community, what did it come to mean?
In this community, PrimeShine was a friendly place, a place to go and go in with a dirty car, happy place. Come out with a clean one. Happy. It was a great business. Loved it. Instantaneous gratification. Come in dirty, a minute later, happy. So not only that, they give you dog biscuits.
Dog biscuits.
Yeah. And they give you the wishy-washies to do the inside of the car. And by the way, they now are doing free vacuums. Can you believe that? Then we, of course, got ingrained in every community that we had our wash. We got very ingrained into the culture, the arts, the education of all those communities. We've given out, I don't know how many millions of dollars in donation over the year for car washes, just car washes to go. We give that to an organization and they can sell them, hand them out, whatever. that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of cooperative advertising. Radio stations came to us, and Sunny 102 was one of our champions early on. They would do a Sunny 102 Tuesday. So on Tuesday, they'd give away something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they started giving away car washes. We'd give them coupons. Call in this number, such as, the listeners, and you'll get a free car wash, and boom, boom, boom. We did a trade with them. Give us the free advertising. Give us a 30-second spot. Give you a car wash. And so that guerrilla marketing
Mm-hmm.
is what we did nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
Evan really did a great job. He came on with some marketing expertise that was terrific, and he did a lot of the grunt work. Early on, was associations that I had getting it going. But about 5 years, I think he became general manager, and he started doing some of his own things.
Adversity, being on the ropes, it's all part of the story. Take me back to the first moment that you had the towel in hand. If you could describe the scene, the where, the why, and the how of that.
So I had a manager, and I would go to work because I had a job.
Mm-hmm.
My boss knew that it was going to be temporary. He knew what I was doing, so there was no secrets. I said, I'll give it a year. Probably going to be leaving. So I didn't do very much towels. As a matter of fact, know what you don't know, and then hire the best, find the best that can do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good. I can talk the game, but I'm not very good at smiling at customers.
Okay.
It's not my forte.
Uh-huh.
My forte is back of the house, accounting, finance, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Evan's so much better in the front of the house. And so there was a point in time that we wrote out job descriptions for ourselves so we weren't stepping on one another's feet.
Uh-huh.
He took care of the front of the house, and I was taking care of the back of the house. So I rarely had a towel in my hand. I'm not of the personality that was able to handle a lot of customer pressure. So I just stayed away from that. I don't know if that answers your question exactly. I can remember I was at the wash one day. It was raining. And when we first opened, you have a rain day in the car wash, no one comes in when it's raining. In the car wash industry, you shut the place down. Well, I'd shut it down. So I'm out there by myself. As you say, rag in hand, was brushing, but okay. And it was raining.
Uh-huh.
And in comes a gal, customer of ours. I recognize her. I said, "What are you doing? It's raining." She says, "The car's dirty." Okay, makes sense to me.
Uh-huh.
So I washed the car, right? Then all of a sudden the sun came out. Then 5 cars came in. Then 10 cars. Now all of a sudden it's lined up to the street. I'm there by myself. I can't get to a phone to call anyone in. I'm going nuts. Right then and there, I said, I got to get myself off the front line. This is not working for me. Let me find someone who knows what they're doing.
Were you ever ready to throw in the towel?
Never when we were running the business. We did throw in the towel. And we threw in the towel when we sold the business and went on to something else.
Mm.
We threw in the towel not because we disliked the business. We loved the business. Not because we weren't making a profit. We were making a healthy profit. But the labor laws allowed some ruthless attorneys to capitalize on things like the handicap. Remember, there was a lawyer that was hitting a whole bunch of people, suing them, small business, because the lines weren't painted right. They didn't follow the law exactly. And we likewise, the labor law is so complicated. We had some shortcomings in what we were doing. For instance, a check, payroll check, by law says you have to have the street address on it. We didn't. We had a P.O. box. We didn't realize it. It would have been very simple for someone to say, put your street address. No problem.
Sure.
But we didn't get that. We got a suit. We got a class action suit that every check that went out for the past 3 years from every employee got dinged. Was a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of the checks. And we ended up paying a seven-figure number once you get beyond 1, 2, 3 employees.
Mhm.
But once you get, and we had 250 employees, once you get to that size, unscrupulous lawyers or taking advantage of it know that you're not going to pay so it's extortion. They'll take you to court,
Mhm.
and instead of going, maybe going to jury trial, whatever, and paying X, you're willing to settle for Y, and who benefits but that the boys don't benefit, but that attorney benefits. It's not a good scene. So we got hit with one of those. We got hit with a couple of and some other lawsuits. The law is not in favor of the small business person. The slip and fall, you name it, all these things. They're not in favor of them. All these billboards with, injury lawyers, call us.
Mhm.
They're not there because there's no business. They're there because the business is incredible.
It's wildly challenging.
So we threw in the towel on that deal. And the timing was right. So throwing in the towel, we would have gone on. I think we would have continued to grow internally. In the marketplace at the same time, there was consolidation. And Wall Street discovered car washing. What I mean by that is large investment bankers found out that car washing is basically Amazon-proof. And there aren't a lot of industries that you can say that. Heavy cash, and, so there's not a lot of receivables and not a lot of inventory. Car washes were wildly sought after. So we felt between what's going on in the labor front and what's going on in the legal front and a feeding frenzy going on by Wall Street, timing was right.
What role has family played throughout your journey, and how did it evolve?
My first employee was my son-in-law. After about 3 years, that didn't work out. So obviously it was very difficult. That's the bad side. That's the negative side. If someone said, would you hire family? And that question comes up often. Would you hire family? Because you understand if it goes bad, it really goes bad. On the other hand, take Evan. If it really goes good, it could really go good. My philosophy was I was able to separate family. I can do that. It's not easy. It's not without pain, but I can separate it. I also say, in terms of your family has to understand what you're going to go through. Prime Shine was my mistress. Prime Shine had to share my time with my family. I say to everyone, when they start talking about family comes first, I understand what they say philosophically. But if you're a small business owner, unless the business is successful, your home life isn't going to be successful. So it's very important that you treat that mistress properly, and your spouse or whoever understands you have a mistress. And it's the way it has to be.
What role on that score, what role did spousal support play throughout your journey?
Well, it just follows. She has to understand you're going to have a mistress, and, and there you go. They have to understand the challenges that you're going to be faced, and either they can join you. There's a lot of husband-wife. I wouldn't personally recommend it. I personally wouldn't do it and didn't do it, but there are successful husband-wife teams. They want to join them. So, they understand the challenges that you're taking. It's a tough deal. It's not easy. It's a tough gig.
Take me back with you to the moment you saw the light, the spark that would eventually become Evan's individual character and brilliance. How did it feel as a business partner? How did it feel as a father?
Fantastic and sensational. Who could be not pleased with seeing their son, daughter excel in an opportunity that you gave them and they grabbed onto the brass ring? We worked very well as a partnership. They don't always work out well. We know plenty of instances where it doesn't. We know few where it does. When it does, it works out great. And it's fun.
What does the word leadership mean to you?
Respect. Above all, respect. Respecting that an individual that's making clear decisions. One who you can follow, want to follow. Lay over your body for him or her. And I've had both hims and hers as being great leaders. But respect, certainly, is the encompassing word.
Well, what do you think makes a good leader?
Honesty. I think honesty above anything else. A good leader needs to tune you in to the pitfalls that may lay ahead from their leadership.
Who is the leader who impressed Norm the most in his early years, and why?
Martin Luther King, certainly, was one of my champions, along with John Kennedy back in my day. They had incredible leadership skills, absolutely incredible leadership skills, both oratory and action skills. I got to say that there are probably others, but I can remember when the Cuban Missile Crisis, so we're talking 1960, I was ready to join. My mother begged me not to join the Army, Navy.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready, there's a leader. I'm ready to die for this gentleman that says we got to protect ourselves.
Who was your hero growing up?
The Lone Ranger.
Ta-da.
Hey, he had 2 pistols in a fur holsters. You kidding?
And the cool mask.
He had Tano.
Of course. His Kimosabe. Yeah. Who is it now?
I think my son is a hero to me and a lot of friends. And my wife, who has put up with me over all these years, got to give her a medal. She's a hero.
I'm going to take it to Stan State. How did your relationship with Stan State begin?
So I don't know how it originally, I was asked to be on the School of Business Advisory Board. So that led then to me being on the foundation board and was president from 2000 to 2001 when Dr. Marveline Hughes was here and Dr. Walter Strong. It was a hell of a team.
Mm.
We had board meetings that were fun. We enjoyed being with one another. Fundraising that was fun. We had board members that enjoyed the company of one another. So it was a great relationship.
When you think of Stan State, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
A diamond in the rough. When I first came here, when Turkey Tech first came in town, by the way, for those of you who are listening, Turkey Tech was a common name of what is now Cal State University Stanislaus. When it first came into town, the fact that it was placed in Turlock was a big riff with the people from Modesto.
Mm-hmm.
I think that riff is long eroded, but when I came onto the board, it still existed, this riff. Dr. Hughes and Dr. Strong and the board were able to get and encompass the Modesto community into Cal State. I look at it as a diamond in the rough. You got a university down the road from you who can provide jobs and people and statistics and research, and you name it. You got to give them, embrace them. And it was very difficult to get the folks down there to embrace the university. I think we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go.
The Warrior Entrepreneurship and Innovation Initiative. You knew this was coming. What do you see for it and its place in the region going forward?
You recognize after this conversation that I'm, very big on entrepreneurship. And I'll tell you why. I told you I was a bad fit for the corporate scene. And it took me almost 30 years to see that. And I'd like to educate those students out there that says, Google may sound pretty fancy. Microsoft, going to work for them is awesome when they talk to their friends versus I'm going to work for Prime Shine Car Wash. So it sounds intriguing. But that Google and that Microsoft and all the other alphabets, you're only secure as the day your boss likes you. The day your boss doesn't like you, you're out of there. So it's not very secure. And the boss sometimes doesn't have any say-so in the matter anyway. They may disband the department or whatever. Going to work for a small business where you get to know the family, probably the family, not necessarily, get to know the owners of the small business. You start having a personal rapport. He or she sees your value and wants to keep you around. It's much more secure than that. I went through that.
Mm-hmm.
I went through it and found very late in life, 48, that your most security is entrepreneurial. Now, there are some misconceptions, and
Like?
you got to be very, very clear
Uh-huh.
to our students that are listening. Their life is not their own. They think it is. Oh, I can do, I don't have, no one's telling me when to be. Well, let me tell you something. I'll tell you who tells you to be there, the customer. If you're going to be successful, you have to appeal to the customer's needs, period. Not your needs, the customer's needs. So here's a misconception out there that you start your own business, your life is your own. Far from the truth. If anything, going to work for Microsoft 9 to 5, then you may have your own life. I just wanted to educate people about they have to look at themselves and say, am I the right person for that corporate job? Or is it better that I start my own business? Not everyone is designed to start their own business. Make sure you understand that. Not everyone can do that. No one has the desire to do it. And then that 9 to 5 job works great. And I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying there's other options. And the Warrior Initiative allows students to explore other alternatives. And hopefully we can achieve that.
Lightning round. Random association time. You know the drill. I'll say a word. Give me a word back. Choices.
I think I just answered it. It's vocational choices.
Vision.
Get out of the box.
Mission.
Needs to be clear and concise.
Passion.
You got to have it in anything to be successful.
Commitment.
Fully.
Value.
It's not about money, it's about value.
Startup.
Tough road ahead, great if you make it, leads to great success.
Failure.
We're all part of it. It's learning from.
Innovation.
Filling a void.
Entrepreneurship.
Great option.
Strategy.
Got to have one.
Creativity.
Fill a void.
Design.
I think of graphics, logo,
Friend.
the best.
Family.
Got to be supportive.
Legacy.
I hope I go down with one. The right one.
And now we come to the segment we'll be heretofore famous, the 11. What is your favorite part of starting something new?
For me, it's the challenge. I'm project-oriented. Strategize. There's a start. Here's what we want to accomplish.
What is your least favorite part of starting something new?
The naysayers.
What interests you the most?
Socializing.
What interests you the least?
Listening to naysayers.
This is a radio station, after all. What music, artist, genre, or song reminds you most of your early days in entrepreneurship?
So I loved Yanni and New Age.
Yanni and New Age.
And so in fact, we had a Yanni segment of a Yanni song for our radio theme, for theme music. And New Age music is freedom and goes in all different directions.
So different from the very compartmentalized accounting, statistical.
I'm sorry you picked up on that.
What food or beverage reminds you most of your memories of your first startup?
The only beverage that really makes any sense is wine.
White or red?
I am partial to Chardonnay as an everyday, but boy, bring me a great red. And by the way, life is too short to drink bad wine. And there's no difference in your business philosophy and building a home or whatever. Do it right the first time. Buy that wine. Why pour it out or not enjoy it? Wine is for enjoyment. Food is enjoyable. Do it right.
Amen. What profession, non-entrepreneurial, do you admire the most?
This may be a surprise to you, but, give me a dishwasher or the domestic.
Mm-hmm.
Those people work awfully hard, get little recognition. They're underdogs.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got to give them credit. Any work, by the way, any work, you got to honor any work. And I do.
Mm-hmm.
But you take the folks that are picking in the fields, they get little credit and perform a fabulous function.
What job prior to entrepreneurship did you like the most and why?
I actually, going through school, through college in Denver, I worked for a record distributor. So a record distributor for you folks today,
Uh-huh.
vinyls. We're talking vinyls.
I collect vinyl.
Platters.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Platters. I sold them out of a record distributorship.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a blast. It was just fun. It's a fun industry. Showbiz. It's all
Right.
showbiz. And so I had a lot of fun doing that going through school.
What job prior to entrepreneurship did you dislike the most and why?
So when I failed out at Denver University the first year, I went back to New York, Queens College. But I had a job stocking shelves in a drugstore. And it took me into the bowels of a old drugstore where sewer pipes were running through and leaking in. I just said, I got to get out of there. So it's the shortest job I ever had. I'm not proud of it.
How long?
I came to work in the morning and left at lunch. And not that I told him. I told the guy, told my boss. And he said, well, I don't, okay.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Thank you for applying here. I think we have a spot for you.
Immediately thereafter, what idea or innovation would you like to pitch him, her, they, it with the universe as your marketplace?
I'd say, let's make peace. Let's rid ourselves of all the autocrats in the world and educate people.
Norm, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to students.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Studio. This podcast is part of the Warrior Entrepreneurship and Innovation program, affectionately known as the WE. Our series is recorded on the campus of Stanislaus State at the KCSS radio station and produced by Frankie Tovar. Follow and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Dr. Pablo Paredes Romero, wishing you the best of everything, always.